Hello, everyone. I am delighted to introduce another special speaker today, Olaf Fjeld, to introduce a teacher, an architect and a teacher. His whole life gave to the students to translate what is architecture to young minds. He worked he's Professor Emeritus at Oslo School of Architecture, but I would say professor is never emeritus, professor is professor. And he also several years served as a rector of this school. Olaf was very active in education. He was leading and participating in the International Laboratory of Architecture and Urban Design. And the whole life he looked in the work of two great architects, the architect Louis Kahn and his close friend Sverre Fehn. So today we will hear the story about these architects.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here, and it's great to be part of this beautiful building for a day. So, thank you for that. Coming from the north, natural light is very much part of your rhythm of daily life. Each season has its own time aspect, which trigger different thoughts, activities, and way of living. The long days of summer lights are very different from the dark fall and the cold winters, very different from the hope and inspiration that belongs to the spring as the days grows longer and longer. The seasonal light that you are born into follows you the rest of your life. You simply have no escape from it. Near the equator is yet another light. The shadows are sharp, distinct, and the night pitch black. This light condition forms memories and belongs to a particular place. And so it is with an architect as well. Wherever you work and build, the light you were born into will in some way influence your thinking and your creative approach. This is evident in both the architects that I will briefly talk about this morning, the Pritzker Prize-winning architect Sverre Fehn and the world-famous architect Louis Kahn. Kahn's first critical Schiller's years before moving to Philadelphia were on the island of Saaremaa in Estonia. Fehn lived and worked his entire life in Norway, and this is a midsummer night in a town where he spent most of its use. These are not in order. These slides are not in order. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, they are not in order. Yeah. I will try to do my best then. Sverre Fjeld and his creative approach. We are never able to escape our own shadow and the imprint upon the earth as it follows the movement of the sun. The lonely person out there is only accompanied with his own shadow, his unbearable situation. We are dependent upon shelter from protection from nature, but also in his inherent power as both an individual and a social collective. The connection with tree is established as a shelter. The shadow from the tree and the human shadow melts together, and one is no longer alone. Architecture is rooted to place, yet it is earthbound. Place and light follow one another. As present architecture seems to have the same expression everywhere, as is seldom rooted to a particular place identity. Fjeld talked about the animal in man, and that to have gradually lost the power an animal has of reading the place. We are about to lose the unique relationship between place and space, which gives architecture its individual or specific identity. He also talked about a room within yourself. We have a room within ourselves, not separate from the room of architecture or the room of nature, meaning that we are linked. We are all connected as an integral part of a spatial sequence. And that inside and outside is the same. We occupy as much space inside as that of the outside, and we are not able to escape that we require our space. In this is also a social aspect, to be alert to life complexity in the aim to transform this complexity into an architectural content. And certainly then the social awareness and the complexity that that has. The Schreiner house, a direct confrontation with the wooded sides, give a clear place identity with nature. The sliding doors allows the interior space a direct connection, as the entire facade can open up and is create a feeling of living outside and inside at the same time. The fall facing the street has few openings, thus you are drawn towards the opposite open facade and the forest. The central space, a unit that contains the kitchen and bath and everything that belongs to water. For Fjeld, this was to be the center, emphasizing the importance of water for survival. The fireplace is a central space and social object in the house. Light enters between the wall and the roof, mixing the light from the large openings. Proceeding details and good craftsmanship were essential in all of his work. A picture from the opening. Fjeld was only 32 years old when he won the competition. He drew the project alone. The model, and here is from the opening. The model, a square of 37 by 37 meter, framed by a wall that serves as a primary support for the roof inside the square. Inside then, there are different layers, each one has a light intensity. It is a very strong relationship between material, structure, and light, based on a search for new materials. The main laminated beams, a new invention at the time, have a span of 35 meters and 1 meter high and 5 meters apart. The plexiglass column searched for a structure that cast no shadow, that changed the established relationship between structure, shadow, and light. And there's a sequence of spaces with different light conditions: open to the sky, transparent material cocoon sprayed on nylon threads, and the dark, opaque places. All these spatial situations were contained within the wall. The relationship between inside and outside, along with the various light intensities, are in constant transformation. The transparent roof. Fjeld insisted that only originals were to be displayed. Here is a painting by Edvard Munch. Fjeld's relationship to the displayed object. There is really no time to go into there, but the shadow of the object was essential for him. The shadow of the object reached the floor. The shadow of the object reached the floor, the ground, as there should be no intermediate shadow and in-between shadow. Fjeld was also the site manager at the age of 32, a huge responsibility for a very young architect. He did not use the entire site, sensing some of the original site identity should remain untouched. And the Nordköping house. As a form, the facade is difficult to comprehend from the outside. The plan is a Greek cross. The interior sliding walls can transform from 1 room to 9 rooms. As a spatial sequence, the house can react to different life and family situations. When the son leaves for college, his room returns to the common room. The fireplace is tucked into the dark masonry wall which faces the north, and its lights belongs to the night. Here is also a central space that are lit from all sides. And the child plays in the light, in the corner light. And the glazed corners is completely open to the outdoor as a threshold between inside and outside. Also, the opening for ventilation also serves as a light source. I don't know what have been doing with the slides, but I'm sorry for that. The Nordic Pavilion in Venice. In one sense, it's a spatial instrument where daylight plays an essential role. The large tree is protected by the structure. Here, it is more of a spatial object in search of a connection between the human, architecture, and nature. The relationship between structure and light is in some way absolute. And on the plan, there is only one column. The main double beam spans 34 meters. The double roof structure runs 2 ways. Each beam is only 6 centimeters thick, with height of 110 centimeters. Thus, the light filters through a space with a height of 220. The trees to the site find their way through the 2 layers of the roof. The interior reveals very much a unique spatial energy, sort of a silent light condition without distinct shadow, almost a diffuse Nordic light. There is a strong interaction and a connection between the visitor, the space, and nature. And as a response to the topography, the slope of the original site is mirrored in the pyramidal stair. Here is under the direction of it. Originally part of a bishop manor house that underwent numerous changes through the ages. It was a barn before it became a museum. When Fjeld was introduced to the project, this was the space he met. The ruin dates from the middle of the 13th century and up. And how do you start such a project? Fjeld sets up ramps and plateaus to generate or add other spatial layers inside the barn. But the identity of the ruin serves as a mediator between all the new layers. Fjeld respected the ruin openings. The spatial identity of the ruin and its light remain intact. The opening is not restored. Only a rectangular sheet of glass is attached to the stone wall. The ramps and the plateau above the ruin carry a spatial layer of their own, but the light is set by the ruin. Fjeld talked here about the built horizon. In particular, the question, where do I place the human between heaven and earth? Fjeld regarded this as a crucial architectural decision within the creative process itself. Where do I place you between heaven and earth? And the material to do so, the ramp and the stair. The objects are placed or that are found inside the barn itself. There is a continuous dig. So whatever is found, you take it up and display it. And it's more or less that of daily objects that are found, but the way they are displayed, one understand it then better. The light, the particular light that belongs to each of the object, and the story that belongs to each of the objects. For example, this hole here that run through the metal sheet of 1 centimeter. Let's talk for a moment then. I will end with Fjeld. Light is not transformed through technical devices to change or give identity to a space. Rather, light is rooted within the identity of the space itself. Kant's relationship to light is rather complex, as it's deeply embedded in his creative process and the creative act itself. We have no time to go deeper into this content, but we can touch upon some remarks that were always with him. In silence, a will to express, the hope or desire to reach an idea. In light, a will to be, to make the physical possible. And that all matter is spent light. It is light when finished being light becomes material. And that all matter is spent light. As I said, when finished being light becomes material. The Exeter Library. You can see here the rendering of the facade, expressing in light and darkness. We very much talk about architecture in the making, a relationship between structure, material, and daylight. Reading the facade in relation to the opening and the indication of the different rooms inside. On the ground level, you walk around the entire building in a search for an entrance, protection the outside, and yet a direct connection. And here comes then the Wise House that should be the beginning of this talk about Khan. It looks like more or less a normal house when you see it on the outside. When coming inside, you have this panel that works with the day and light conditions. And then you can sort of enter the mood within your own. The way that you search for a particular mood inside the space can be controlled by the panel itself. Inside there is, well, you can see its tendency of a Frank Lloyd Wright, but with the panels, it's a complete different house. I don't know what I've done to the slides, but here you can see the drawing of it. And the reading of the Exeter that I just talked about. From the different openings, you can also read the different light condition inside. And that you can walk around the building from the ground, searching for the way to enter. And finally up, you go up this beautiful stair of concrete and travertine, and you pause for a moment, and you reach this very, very large space in a certain way that is lit from above, and with this large openings that takes or sucks in the light in different ways. And here, as a corner reading, you can read the way the building is made through the way you read it in the facade. The plan and the section. What is unique in this building is that each spacer layer has its structure. It's a structure for the large open space, it's a structure for the books, and it's a structure where you read. So you read in between different type of structural identity, or you go to the surface, or go to the facade of the building, in which then you have your own desk, and through panels you can move the light in a way that fits you. The ventilation and structural identities then works between these structural layers. And on top, there is the open space, very different from what you met in the beginning. Order is, it should be a complete other place, but order is, Khan said. But he added, order does not imply beauty. If we look for a moment at the Kimball Art Museum, large structural walls open to the garden on one side and complemented a long wall on the other side, protected from sunlight but in direct contact with the building and the garden. It is already from the beginning a rather dense spatial experience. And you meet a set of stairs along the way, a sign to enter. You walk under a cluster of trees. And for Khan, a tree should never stand alone. It's always asked for connection with other trees. and their shadow. And light captured inside a spatial sequence that also acts as a clock. It offers a reading of time as a consequence of the relationship between structure and light. Light and time captures inside this outdoor space. And the plan of the building, there is hardly anything there. Only one reads it as a set of columns and some inside open spaces. As a plan, it reveals an order, but its spatial information stops here. I find this very interesting in the way that from the plan, you can reveal a spatial order, but in the adding of column sentence, but it does not imply beauty. The scale of the vault is the same as the one we meet outside. The light enters from the top and is then articulated to serve the displayed object below. Kant said there should be no room without daylight. And then the articulation of the daylight entering the space. Daylight enters at the point where different, and then daylight enters at the point where different structures meet. And then the chords that are given name by the intensity of light, the yellow, blue, and green chords. And each chord reveals its name in relation to its light intensity. The auditorium scale repeats the scale of the vault. And here as another of the green chords. Early sketch with a garden of trees in the open space between the biological towers. In a meeting with Louis Barron commented that there should be no trees here, and Kant took to his advice. Entrance space that in some way takes you by surprise. There is just a mass of light, and you are in that mass. Dr. Salt asked for a space that in some way had the capacity to realize creative thoughts and energy, and he received that. The section of the building itself, Dr. Salt. Daylight enters deep into the building. And it follows you on top. And in the afternoon, the light and the material really comes together as one and the same. In the study cell, he uses direct light. Indirect light. It first touches the wall before it enters the space. The outdoor room is mass. It's static, but light as a room is in constant transformation. The spatial mass and its light at night. And I have to touch upon the hollow column. Kant introduced this term hollow column in his search for a new relationship between the room, its structure, and light. He first used the term hollow column while he was working on the Trenton bathhouse. He named the corner structure a hollow column. This idea was later developed and fully expressed in his proposal for the Mikvah Israel Synagogue in Philadelphia. Here's the model and a plan of it. The hollow column was regarded as a functional space, but that its main responsibility was to give light to the ambulatory. the hollow column here, which then means that the light for the ambulatory space had already been taken care of by the way of the hollow column, meaning that the main space was freed of making opening for light. This allowed for a greater structural freedom and form in itself. Okay, I will go very fast. There's not so much left. Toyo Ito was inspired by the notion of the hollow column in his Mediatek building. This is one of Kahn's last work, finished just before he died. He talked about the house in class as it was under construction at the time. Visiting the house many years later, I was oddly surprised. I sensed a Nordic attitude, not only in relation to a spatial form aspect, but in search for a particular light, a touching reminder of the childhood light. Thank you very much. I'm sorry about the pictures. They were not complete in order. Thank you.
We didn't notice. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for very inspirational talk and visual talk. I'm very delighted as landscape architect to see that. I have noticed several questions for you, and I will tell what about these questions, and you will choose 3, okay? What is the best for you? So the first question, one question is about the light and landscape. Another question is about the light and landscape. Yeah. Another question is about Sverre Fehn as your friend and your book. Another question about animal blindness, visual, sensual, and light. And the last question is about the challenge in the materialization of the light. What is best? What would you like to answer? Which of the questions? I will form, so one of them or 3 of them. Landscape, Sverre, animal, and challenge.
Well, I will do my best.
Yeah, about what would you like to
I think I would start with Sverre Fehn.
With
Sverre Fehn, the architect.
With Sverre Fehn. So
okay.
The question about Sverre Fehn is, I understood he was your close friend, no? Sverre?
Yes.
Yes.
We taught together for 30 years,
yes.
and I worked in an office, and I written numerous books on him.
Yeah, and
so I knew him very well.
Yeah, you wrote numerous books about him. So my question is, what was the motivation and the drive to write about your friend?
Well, I have my whole education in the States. I was a student of Louis Kahn, the last class before he died. Then I had been in the States for 7 years, and I felt it was about time to go home again. And I heard about this architect, Sverre Fehn. And I went to his office, always a very small office, never more than 4 people at the time. And I asked for a job. And he paused for a while, and a couple of days after, he said yes. And the time in his office and the time with the 30, 40 years after then was sort of a continuation of the being in the class of Louis Kahn. It was the same intensity, I would say also the same in search for an architectural identity. So in that sense, I felt very lucky to be part of a person with such a strong personal strength and very much very great architect. But to connect him with Louis Kahn and was very important for me at that time. So the years together with him was a very rewarding year. He was the same age as Birke. So they are both 100 now.
Why did you write a book about him? Why?
Well, again, I have to come back when I came back to Oslo after so many years in the States. He showed me his work, and I said, Mr. Fjeld, I think this work need an international audience more than it had at the time. Though he turned very famous early in life by the Bristol Pavilion and the Venice Pavilion. But, and I have always been interested in writing. I feel it's very much part of sort of defining one's own thoughts. So to write the first book on him, very naive in a very naive way, in the young way. And it was then published by Risoldi in '83 in New York.
Thank you. And the last question is about the challenge. In the process of materialization of light, what is the most challenging?
Oh, I think light is the most challenging and the most beautiful material you can work with in architecture. For the first, it doesn't cost anything. For the other, it is the key issue in any space. The way light enters the space. So I agree on Kahn, there is not really that much architecture without daylight. So I think it's an incredible source. And I think it's an incredible source for any young people, any old people, to work with, because it's so, you will never be able to, it will always be material that has the capacity to revitalize architecture. And we will and should always be in search of that. It's a true key material for all the other materials that we work, and that makes light possible to work with. So it's an endless inspiration, I would say. And as I stated in the beginning, that you can never really escape from it. It's with you wherever you are, and to open yourself into that source of light, I think it's very inspiring and very important.
Thank you so much. We don't have time for more questions, but again, very wonderful lecture supposed to be about architecture, but it was about landscape and man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.